They're considered one of the most critical witnesses yet. In the Madlanga Commission's view, the implicated police official known as Witness F was the apparent go-between for Vusi Musi Camp Matlala and top SAPS General Shadrach Sibiya. The Commission, as legal journal Karyn reports, is leading Witness F's sensitive WhatsApp messages that also reveal talk of some sort of arms deal with the apparent nephew of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza. We ask, what on earth next?
Had you previously engaged in any arms deals either with the Deputy President or his nephew? Witness F, no, I did not. Just when you think the evidence couldn't get any weirder, we see this happening just before lunchtime on a Tuesday.
Later in our training topic, are these John Steenhuisen's final days as DA leader? Some sources suggest so, ahead of the party's elective Congress. And finally, the historic Wind of Change speech was delivered in our parliament on this day in South African history, heard a little later.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcast channels.
In Rauby's Pointers Braai quiz today, we ask, who's our current Minister of Correctional Services? I'll give you the answer at the end of the show. Get it right and you'll win the priceless prize of being the most informed around the Braai place. My name's Graeme. This is The Lead and this is the South African Story. Moving to our top story today, while she always ensures she has adequate snacks and water during her long hours covering the Madlanga Commission in central Pretoria, she's our specialist legal journalist, Karyn, and she's live on the line now with the very latest. Karyn, how's it going?
Well, I mean, what an extraordinary morning in the life of this commission. Just when you think your eyebrows couldn't raise any further, your jaw hits the floor.
Absolutely. And can I just say before we delve into everything we've heard thus far in the week, our lead listeners are crying out for more Karyn and Graeme episodes. I'm just saying.
It's because you're so careful about the snack questions. People appreciate empathy, Graeme.
I'm glad. Okay, I thought we'd start with Monday because we kind of missed that, and I know that it's super important here because it kind of speaks to the whole efficacy of the criminal justice system as we know it. It really drills into the heart of it. Yeah, we heard from SAPS ballistics expert Captain Lawrence Magotlwe, and essentially colleagues previously accused this captain of nearly bungling the probe into the Armand Swart murder case. And then we know that breakthrough later on in that case led detectives to track the murder weapons there to numerous other cases alleged to involve the alleged death squad leader Katiso Katie Molefe. What did the captain tell the commission?
Well, this was truly extraordinary evidence because Captain Lawrence Magotlwe cheerfully admitted to the commission during questioning by one of the evidence leaders that he accepted that his first report on the murder of engineer Armand Swart, which was so expertly covered by Carl Cohen at the time, which, would have resulted in the suspects in the case being allowed to walk free because he'd failed to link the murder weapons to the crime scene in that first report. But it was kind of this extraordinary thing where he was fully admitting major failings in that report, but simply saying, well, ballistics experts or, police ballistics experts are so overwhelmed, we're expected to type our reports, that these kind of mistakes are just commonplace. And DCJ Madlanga saying that, this was incredibly disturbing evidence, if correct, for its implications on the criminal justice system.
One of the quotes that stood out for me from the captain was that they aim for quantity over quality. Which
absolutely.
Is very, very concerning. Karyn, there's also been the saga unfolding about this allegedly dodgy relationship between ANC-linked businessman Suleiman Karim and Vusi Musi Kat Matlala. Now, the allegation here is that Matlala funneled up to around $2.5 million from the cancelled SAPS Health Services tender. The money's gotten there to Karim, and then once upon a time received this ominous text back in these WhatsApp exchanges that quote unquote Morgan is sorted, and this might be sort of a throw to Hangwani Morgan Maamela, which of course is the central figure in the extraction scandal regarding the Tembisa hospital, which a lot of this stuff flows from. Now, but Karim, he doesn't want to come to the commission. Why? He's launching a court case.
Well, essentially what has happened is that Karyn became the first implicated person. Of course, he denies that he was implicated. He says, you've never presented me with the evidence that implicates me. Never mind the absolute sea of WhatsApps between himself and Kat Matlala, where he readily appears to serve as a kind of fixer for Matlala. You know, when Matlala is struggling to get these so-called purchase orders from the SAPS in relation to another highly questionable contract, which was exposed by News 24 in reporting that ultimately resulted in that contract being cancelled on the day that Matlala is then arrested for the attempted murder of his girlfriend, Tebogo Topajane. Of course, Karyn denying that there's anything implicating him and insisting that the over, I think it was about 2.5 million rand that he got from Medicare was in fact part of a separate deal that he had with the company, but going into no further detail about that in his court application. But essentially, like some of the other witnesses that we've been seen before, we saw this with Lesecha Sonona. We've also seen that with witness F, who is currently on the stand in the Madlanga Commission. They are complaining that he hasn't been treated fairly, that he wasn't given adequate ability to prepare his testimony, and that, you know, he feels that in one particular part of his application, that Brown Machotsi, of course, is the alleged fixer who had integral relationships with Matlala and others, was treated far more fairly than he was in being expected to respond to the testimony against him. Of course, DCJ Madlanga absolutely denying this and describing this urgent application, which is being heard in the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg as we speak, as a manifest abuse of process.
Sure. And the commission is challenging that application because Karyn was meant to testify this Friday, right?
Absolutely. And remember that the bar for urgent applications, urgent interdict applications in our court system is very, very high. And the commission has essentially said that what Karyn has done by launching this application at this very late stage, where he is known for a considerable length of time, I think the Madlanga actually says it's about 3 months, that he was going to be expected to come and give this evidence, and, you know, has absolutely failed to provide the statement that he was asked to do, so much so that the commissioner just resolved that they were simply going to question him without that statement. They've said, look, you can't bring an urgent application that essentially gives us a few days or nights to respond at times when the commission is sitting and expect the court to entertain this, because it's self-created urgency and it is abusive. So the commission has asked that either essentially this case is struck from the roll for a lack of urgency, and that if it is going to be heard, appropriate time is given to it for that to happen. But of course, we know that if there isn't an urgent order granted in favor of Karyn, he faces very serious legal consequences if he does not honor the subpoena against him that was issued for this Friday. As we've seen with, the interactions around witness F's testimony today, the commission is itching to take criminal sanctions against someone who fails to honor its processes. And Madlanga indicating very much today that that is a distinct possibility.
I'm itching to get into witness F's testimony thus far, Karyn. Okay, so today's proceedings got off to a slightly later than usual start. Madlanga didn't like that, of course. Ask any senior jurist in the history of time of South African scope, and they always don't like being late. The lawyer for one police official, as we now understand it, has been implicated in the presidency statement last week, is now known as witness F before the commission. Didn't initially want to come and testify specifically around these very sensitive WhatsApp messages. What's the deal here? And the commission said, hey, we're actually going to go ahead with these proceedings whether you like it or not, right?
There is no interdict barring the commission from leading this evidence. And as Matthew Chaskelson said, and I mean, this is the chief evidence leader in the commission, he said on record this morning that this evidence is the most highly relevant to the commission's functioning that we have heard thus far. And that, Graeme, is because it draws a concrete link between Kat Matlala, the attempted murder accused, and Shadrach Sibiya, the Deputy National Commissioner that Nhlanhla Nkosazana very much identified as a central role player in pushing for the dissolution of the Political Killings Task Team. I don't think we can underestimate how significant this evidence is. And we know from what Chaskelson has previously told the Commission that it was sourced from the police who had seized this witness F's phone as part of their own investigation and recovered these WhatsApps from it. This evidence that we are hearing today has never been heard before. And it's, there's some incredible details coming out, including Chaskelson's submission that Matlala had paid for impalas for Sibiya in about March 2025. And this was, of course, after the controversial dissolution of the PKTT by Minister Mkhulu, and after Shadrach Sibiya, of course, was sending those controversial, letters demanding that those PKTT dockets come to his national office. So this is explosive stuff. We've, of course, heard some mildly interesting and possibly salacious evidence about Didi Mabuza, but extraordinary testimony coming out of the Commission today.
Hey, you can't just drop those little Easter eggs and pique my interest so much, Karyn.
We're going to pick them up, Graeme.
Yeah. What is this? Obviously, may soul rest in peace. Our late Deputy President David Mabuza never really put his feet out to strike for the number one position. But what do these messages relate to? Is it from Didi Mabuza, or is it someone close to him? And it speaks about some issues regarding firearms. Give us a little bit more detail.
So what happened was that Chaskelson drew witness F's attention to an exchange that he had with someone that he identified as Deputy President David Mabuza. And on witness F's version, this person is in fact not the late Deputy President. It is his nephew, aka Simpiwe Mabuza, who on the evidence that has been led thus far, sent witness F, a picture of a guns, and then a video demonstration of these guns being fired. Of course, they were 12-gauge shotguns manufactured in South Africa. Then basically made a proposition to him, as Chaskelson put it, for a potential arms deal. And then at one point, Chaskelson says to witness F, had you previously engaged in any arms deals, either with the Deputy President or his nephew? Witness F, no, I did not. Just when you think the evidence couldn't get any weirder, we see this happening just before lunchtime on a Tuesday.
And I'm sure there's going to be a lot in store after lunch today once Karyn gets her snacks in. We're yet to hear at this moment in time if the Commission's going to extend its work beyond the March deadline, Karyn. Of course, the clock is ticking. We can see the urgency on the faces of the Commissioners. They want to cram in as much as possible. Who at the top of your mind still needs to come back and testify if the Commission doesn't extend its work or ask the President for an extension?
Well, I mean, the major one now that we hear is Sibiya, because he has been highly implicated. And, this testimony today, I think, is going to create a nexus point, or already creating a nexus point between Matlala and Sibiya.
Impala Gate.
Pivotal evidence. Impala Gates. And also, the fact that Matlala had requested Sibiya's number, but then chose to communicate through witness F, who, of course, is the same person that Dumisani Khumalo, the crime intelligence head, testified about visiting Katiso Malefe and, exiting that property with a white paper bag that, quote unquote, Dumisani Khumalo said, unfortunately, you couldn't see the chocolates. We will all draw our own conclusions about that one.
Does my head in, man. What a novel. I thought I'd ask you this perhaps pithy question, but I like it. What's the one aspect of this commission that's really sort of sat with you throughout, Karyn? And it's quite difficult, for somebody to follow a high court trial from beginning to end. You are quite tired by the end of it. I think people don't understand that as a journalist, you're constantly having to pick up on all the details, and it's no different, of course, with the commission, notwithstanding the Zondo Commission, one of the longest ever we've ever seen in South Africa. What's that one thing that's always stuck with you that sometimes you wake up in the morning and you go, that was really interesting, and I still feel there's huge question marks over it? What stands out for you?
What is truly heartbreaking for me is, Makgotla's evidence about the murder of Armand Swart. And the fact that this young father of two is essentially gunned down and butchered with AK-47s in such a heinous way that his children can only look at his arm, because that is all that essentially, remains of him. And then this kind of casual attitude of this pivotal police witness who is so intrinsic to justice being done for the people who did this, having this incredibly casual attitude about his own potentially fatal errors in that investigation. And I think that we need to come back again and again and again to the fact that we have deeply problematic high levels of violent crime in this country. All of us will know people who have been murdered. I know 6 people who have been murdered. And to see, the deep factionalism, to see the politicization, and now in this last week to see what clearly is compelling evidence linking a major criminally accused tenderpreneur to one of the most powerful police officers in the country is deeply disturbing. And it's why we need to keep following this commission, and we need to keep demanding answers and accountability for those people who have been implicated in these crimes.
Right, and as the commission returns after lunch with Karyn, Karyn's fingers doing all the walking through the yellow pages of the front page of News 24, you can catch all of her latest musings, some opinion that you tend to throw in a little bit there, Karyn, but also mostly facts, the actual sort of contextual synapses of what you're hearing before the commission gets put in our live blog, with the latest headline reading, Witness F says Didi Mabuza nephew offered him guns in WhatsApp chat. Just when you thought it was about to wind down, it just gets all the more interesting. Karyn, thanks so much. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Graeme.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179. Trending topic.
In our trending topic, are these John Steenhuisen's final days as Democratic Alliance leader? Some sources seem to suggest so ahead of the party's elective congress that's coming up this April. It's long been held that Steenhuisen would stand for re-election as party leader, with the younger and up-and-coming popular member, Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, even telling reporters that he would not run against Steenhuisen. But since the Dion George axing saga and mounting criticism over Steenhuisen's role as Agriculture Minister for his handling of the current foot and mouth disease outbreak amongst cattle, the internal whispering seemed to suggest Steenhuisen may be on the cusp of calling it a day. And perhaps by the time you hear this, Steenhuisen would have poured cold water on the intense speculation or confirmed it all, as he's expected to host a presser this Wednesday. One well-regarded source has told News 24's Velani Ludidi that Steenhuisen would not step away without a deal in the hand, whilst the leader's longtime campaign manager, Dean McPherson, has gone on record to say that the speculation is just not true. Hill-Lewis is meanwhile not keen to say much either. And even if the mayor would put his hand up, he'd face the daunting task of corralling DA support across the country to stand. One of the party's biggest electoral challenges remains building another stronghold outside of the Western Cape. How intriguing. What say you? Damn squib or a potentially big moment? Drop us a comment below.
And finally,
ending off now with On This Day in South African History, the 3rd of February 1960. A monumental day for UK-SA Cold War relations. British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan delivered his famous Wind of Change speech to a joint sitting of Parliament in Cape Town, openly criticising apartheid from inside South Africa. Well, he warned that African nationalism was rising fast across the continent, claiming that South Africa had failed to recognise the strength of these political shifts. But apartheid Prime Minister Hendrik Verwoerd rejected the warning outright. And just weeks later, the Sharpeville massacre shocked the world and intensified global condemnation of apartheid. Later, the growing break with Britain and the Commonwealth helped drive South Africa's push towards republicanism, which was formalized in 1961. That's courtesy South African History Online. In Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz today, we asked who's our current Minister of Correctional Services. It's a rather easy one. It's Pieter Groenewald of the Freedom Front Plus. He's part of the current GNU. The latest from him in Parliament is that he's calling for an independent investigation into the state of Western Cape prisons, following 2 unnatural deaths at Goodwood Prison and in another case, a remand detainee who was wrongly released from Paulsmoor. MPs also flagged a severe staffing shortage in correctional facilities. Well, if this was your answer all along, you win bragging rights. You get the priceless prize of being the most informed person around the Braai place. That's pretty priceless indeed. Thanks so much for choosing the lead on News 24 as your choice news podcast this 2026. More than 1 million listens and counting. We're shooting for the moon this year. If you'd like to get involved, drop us your comments at theleader24.com or in the comment sections below. Hit like, follow and subscribe. That way you'll be notified of all of our upcoming editions on any platform where you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple and YouTube. My name's Graeme and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have the lead.